Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome everyone here tonight. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Peter Levy, and I serve as senior counsel to the law firm of Mandelbaum Barrett, a place that I have called home for the last 11 years. And I will tell you with real pride, the finest law firm you're ever going to find. The law firm's CEO and named partner, Bill Barrett, is sitting at the end there. And it has been my privilege for many years to moderate this program. It's a real privilege. It's exciting because this is your seminar. You're going to hear from 5 of the brightest, most dynamic, knowledgeable people in their industries tonight. But the truth of the matter is the fuel for tonight's discussion comes from you. It's an opportunity for you to ask questions from some people who you would probably have to spend a good deal of time getting time on their calendar. So it's a really great opportunity. And I encourage you to ask questions about business, about exit strategies, and about the next stages of your individual careers. If I could just take 3 minutes, I want to give you 3 very different perspectives on the business world today. And I'm going to mention to you 3 individuals: John Morgan, attorney at law, Professor Angela Lee Duckworth, and Mr. Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We'll see if we can bring this together. So many of you may know John Morgan. He's a billionaire. He owns the largest personal injury law firm in the world. You've likely seen his TV commercials. Morgan came from nothing. When he started his career, he said he needed a cosigner just to pay with cash. I mean, he was broke. But when you talk to Morgan now, and he talks about success, John Morgan says, life is luck. I made 1,000 left turns. Then I made 1,000 right turns. If I had made one different turn, everything could have been different. And yet, I pat myself on the back and I say, look how great I am. No, he says, I'm just a lucky guy. Successful people pat themselves on the back too much. And what they should really do is get on their knees, thank God that those left turns and those right turns ended up in the right place. A second perspective I want to share with you is that of Professor Angela Lee Duckworth. Professor Duckworth is a renowned professor and author, and she is also the person who has delivered the 6th most popular TED Talk of all time. Her TED Talk is on what's called the power of perseverance. And what Professor Duckworth did is she studied all kinds of people in super challenging situations. She asked one singular question: who is successful and why? Duckworth's team studied cadets at West Point. They went to the toughest schools in Chicago and analyzed the teachers. She attended the National Spelling Bee to see who would succeed there. And she spent a great deal of time at the most profitable and growth-driven private companies in the United States. In all of those contexts, Professor Duckworth found out one characteristic, just one, emerged as the true predictor of success. And it wasn't social intelligence, and it wasn't good looks, and it wasn't physical health, and it wasn't IQ. It was grit. Duckworth defines grit as the passion and perseverance for long-term goals. Grit is having stamina. Grit is sticking to your future day in, day out, week in, week out, not just for the month, but for years, and doing everything you can to make your future a reality. And then the last perspective I want to share with you is that of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Now, when he was receiving his Lifetime Achievement Award, an Emmy for Lifetime Achievement, He stopped in the middle of his speech and he said, all of us have people without whom we would not be the people we are, the achievers we are, people who shaped us. He said, take one moment tonight when you leave here, on your drive home or when you go to bed, and reflect on that one person who helped shape you and become the person you are today. Make sure in your own way you thank that one person who helped you succeed. So give it some thought. Did you get here because of the luck that John Morgan talks about, or the grit of Professor Duckworth? Or did somebody help you succeed in a way that nobody else could? Probably for most of us, it's a combination of all three. But each of us has a unique story, an individual pathway that has brought you here. And now, for many of you, as you consider where your business is headed, a new chapter of your journey begins. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to the best panel that we have ever had here today. To my immediate left is Mr. Alan Sharfstein. Alan is the founder and CEO of the DAC Group, with over 40 years of experience advising middle market businesses on growth and exit strategies. Alan is a seasoned M&A expert, and he has led more than 750 transactions and is known for combining Wall Street expertise with entrepreneurial insight. And Alan and I realized that we were first on a panel discussion 30 years ago, and it's hard to believe considering we're only 40 at this time, so it's pretty good. To the left of Alan is Adam Schlossberg. Adam Schlossberg, CFP, is the managing partner at Northeast Sequoia Private Client Group. He's focused on tailored financial strategies. Currently ranked number 8 on Forbes' 2025 Best in State list, but in my opinion, quickly rising to number 1. And Adam is recognized for his client-focused approach and expertise in guiding entrepreneurs and individuals through complex financial planning. Our two guests of honor here tonight are businessmen. The first one I'd like to introduce you to is Mr. Bill Bartzak. Bill is the CEO of Kai Group Holdings, the parent company of AccuTitle, which supports more than 2,500 title professionals and transacts over 1 million closings annually. A serial entrepreneur and the co-founder of multiple investment firms, Bill also founded MD Online and serves on several boards. Bill is an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and he is a member of Seton Hall's Business School Hall of Fame. John Peck. John has built and scaled a leading commercial roofing company before selling it to a private equity-backed platform. By focusing on systems and leadership development, John transitioned from day-to-day operations to being a strategic advisor, and ultimately was able to exit his successful business on his own terms. At the far left is my partner, Bill Barrett. Bill is the CEO of Mandelbaum Barrett. Bill is a trusted advisor to entrepreneurs and business owners. He guides them through business transitions with strategic legal insight and real-world experience. Bill focuses on building value, minimizing your risks, and ensuring that every deal aligns with his clients' long-term goals. I will tell you, and again, I put my money where my mouth is, Bill is the best attorney I know, and I say that because I was Bill's client long before I was his partner, and he's the real deal. So with that in mind, before we open this up to the floor and we get your perspectives, I was hoping we could just take a couple of minutes, and I wanted to ask if Alan Sharfstein could give us kind of an overview on what's happening in the M&A market today.
Happy to do that. I'm going to talk specifically about the M&A market in the middle market, because I think that's where most of you spend your time and your lives thinking about. And the middle market is sometimes a little bit different than the larger markets, but it is, at this point in time, an extraordinarily active place. I will tell you that our pipeline of deals is as robust as it's ever been. And the question is, why is that happening? What's really driving the market today? And I would sort of say there are probably three things driving the buyer groups who are looking at businesses. The first group are the larger, I'll call it public and other large companies. And many of them have committed to their shareholders and others that they're going to grow. But as many of you know, it's difficult to grow businesses organically. And so when they have a commitment to grow, where do they turn? They turn to the M&A market to help them grow their businesses. The second large factor are the private equity groups. And in today's marketplace, there are estimates that these private equity groups have raised over $3 trillion of dry powder sitting on the side, available to do deals. And if you know private equity, they have to use it or lose it, and they want to use it. So they are out there actively buying businesses, and it's a combination of businesses that are going to be platforms for them, similar to the business that you sold to them, that is a platform for growth, as well as add-ons. So very often they are platform buyers, but sometimes they're strategic also. And the third thing that is really driving growth, especially in this market that we're in here in New Jersey, are the non-US buyers who are coming into this marketplace. If you are from outside the United States and you don't have a presence here, as critical as we are about our own economy and things that are going on here, it's still regarded by most as the safest, largest, most vibrant economy in the world. Companies want to be here, and they're investing here. And there are some interesting trends going on in that space with non-US buyers wanting US footholds, given what's going on in the world of tariffs and those types of things. So that also is driving extraordinary interest in this marketplace. So you put that all together, and it really is an exciting marketplace. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't some problems out there or some challenges that we're facing in terms of doing deals. If we take a look at the world today of what's driving deals and what's driving diligence on deals, a couple of years ago, I would have told you that it's all customer related and sales related and top line driven. Today, we're spending more time dealing with supply chain, thinking about tariffs, thinking about how we're going to address those issues for the clients that we represent. So you're going to see a lot more interest on those types of situations, those types of issues for buyers of transactions. And there are other things that also are impacting us in terms of, we know that there's more customer concentration now, which is a concern of many people. But again, we put this all together, despite some of these headwind issues that we're facing, it's a really dynamic marketplace. And as we look forward to next year, in 26, we see very much a continuation of where we are now, of these multiple groups being interested in the marketplace, owners of businesses, by the way, selling at younger and younger ages. A decade ago, typical seller of business was 67 years old, selling because no kids were going into the business. This year, our average age of our seller is in their 50s. And why? Because I think there's just more optionality now for business owners. You can sell part of your business. You can sell to private equity. You can keep a piece of it. You can exit early, and you can go on to a second career and start another business. All of this basically says we're in a great market right now.
Thank you, Alan. Bill, if you could take a couple of minutes and tell people a little bit about your journey and your life as a businessman and entrepreneur.
Sure. Thanks. So I guess mine started when I was little, and I could never work for somebody else. That was just my mentality as a kid. But the real break for me was post-college, and realized that there was a big issue in healthcare, that doctors couldn't get their insurance claims into the insurance companies other than the U.S. Postal Service. So this is going back to 1995. AOL, AT&T, the companies that were shipping disks at the time so people can get internet connectivity, is when this started. The idea came about of just being able to send those transactions to us and then move them on to the insurance companies, and then start moving all that data back and forth. Today, it's a pretty well-oiled engine that's going on out there, but we were at the forefront of making that happen in a system that anybody could use any platform and send that information over to us, and we would do the hard part of figuring out how to get those transactions across. So one of the things you just said, Mr. Rogers, was a big one there. So it was having the right person that can help guide you in everything that you're doing. I have that in a man named Jerry Stead. I'm actually leaving here tonight, flying out tomorrow morning to do a speech for his Stead Impact Ventures out in Arizona tomorrow. Same subject, preparing your companies for an exit. Because that's really what one of my biggest lessons was through the years, was what to do, how to do it. And after we were done with MD Online, we sold that. We started in '95, sold it in 2014 to Bain Capital Summit Partners. And then I wanted to help other entrepreneurs like Jerry helped me grow a business from one level to the next to the next. And that's not an easy task by any means. And you need somebody to really guide you and help along the way on something like that. So after a couple of years of helping other entrepreneurs, investing in other companies, which I'm still active in, I wanted to start something else and get my team back together, because there's nothing in any company, and I think everybody here would agree, you have nothing if you don't have a great team around you. It's not about me doing something great. It's about me having a great team that does great things. And so just to give you an idea, we started exploring into the title insurance industry and thought it would be a good idea for us to go and buy a title agency. So a couple of us went and got our licenses, and we got into the title insurance part of it to learn what was wrong, because I was hearing from so many people, there's so much wrong in the technology in this industry, but we had no idea what we were doing. So it started with us going and getting our own licenses, and then we acquired a title agency, and then we acquired three more in the first year, and realized we didn't want to be in the title agency business because we knew software. And again, those are the moves that you have to make sometimes, because you have to be able to switch on the fly, and it could be just my mindset on it, but I just one of the most important things that I was always looking for is money when you sleep. So software and recurring revenue businesses is just really, really important to what I always look for in businesses. So we found the title agency business. You're hunting, you're doing a great job, and it's all client relationships, but the software part of it is the key. So the 4 companies that we bought had the same software. So we ended up buying that company. That was what's called AccuTitle. And then since then, and that was 2019, we've acquired, in total, in this industry and another industry that I'm involved in, we've done, our team, 12 acquisitions, and we disposed of 4, but that was the title agency part that we sold to someone. So it's, I'm eager to hear more about what others have done and how they've done it, but there's a lot of lessons learned along the way that we're eager to share with all of you. So thank you very much for having us be here.
Thanks, Bill. John, can you share your perspective and what got you here?
Yeah, Bill, that was fantastic. You're powerhouse. Really good hearing that. So it was interesting. 51 is the average age. I guess I'm 41, and I started my company with my brother when we were 22 years old. And commercial roofing is a space we were in. And I remember starting it and him and I leaving the other company we were at and saying, man, if we can just make $18 an hour, which was about $40,000 a year together as an entrepreneur, we're winning. That's perfect, because we don't have to work for anybody else. We really wanted to work on our own. And we started at that point with 1 truck. And over the years, it became 2 trucks. We hired a couple more employees. We got a warehouse. We got 2 warehouse bays. And then all of a sudden, now we have a warehouse with an office in it. Now we need to hire office staff. This is probably like around 2011, and everyone was like, who starts a business in the middle of a recession? It was like 2007, 2008, we got going. But what I realized we were doing was kind of special over the years as we continue to expand out and hire people. We went from owner-operator to professional business. We were trying to build for scale, and we didn't realize what we were doing at the time. We focused on service and maintenance, and now that I'm kind of post-exit, I realize this reoccurring revenue conversation comes up more and more. And along the way, we had all these challenges. Commercial roofing, it's very labor-intensive, very difficult to find labor. So I had someone tell me in a conversation, they said, great, all your roofing contractors, you want to put your money into getting more sales. But what if you really spent that same amount of money and you put it into hiring the right people? you put it into your HR team, you put it into the salaries and benefits of those individuals. And I like to believe that the investment we made into those teams along the way really allowed us to become an organization as opposed to just a contractor, which, oh, I'm a roofing contractor, which used to be a stigma. And now that the consolidation has taken place in our industry, it really has a different connotation to it. So in 2024, I successfully, I guess that's kind of depends on who you talk to. I think it was pretty successful, but successfully navigated an acquisition of my company to a private equity team. So we were merging in with the platform, so we became kind of a pseudo platform in the Northeast. We operated by that point in 13 states. We had access and managed over 400 individuals at any given time with all the projects we had going around the Northeast, and merged into a group in the Southeast. So now from our coverage in the Northeast of 13 states, now we have a coverage with this other group in the Southeast. And our mission in this new version is to continue to scale the company, continue to find other acquisitions, source them in our industry, and really be able to kind of use our knowledge of experience of almost 20 years in the roofing space to really understand what makes these other entities tick, what kind of skeletons are they hiding, and really find the most premium contractors, business operators to join our group.
Thank you very much.
And obviously, through that transaction, though, thankfully we had MB Law involved in that process. I do not a selfless plug.
I love the plug.
Yeah, no, I needed to plug that because I wanted to explain actually why I'm here is because they really helped navigate us through that process. So I'm honored to be invited back here to speak, and hopefully I can provide some information.
We appreciate the story, and thank you so much. We've got some real experts up here, and all of you have different perspectives and different businesses. So what we're going to do is open up the floor. It's yours. The agenda going forward is now up to the audience. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask any of our panelists? Sure.
Hi, Steve Rado. You had mentioned the importance of the team and employees, and you in your description also mentioned the investment in the roofers that you had, right? Because I forget what the term was. You didn't want to be referred to as a roofing contracting company or whatever it was. In my business, it's very important if we decide to have an event that my people are taken care of. But you think about, if there is an opportunity, when or if you include your most senior people in those discussions, because obviously there's benefit in keeping it confidential. You don't want to lose your people, but you want to include them in an opportunity if it occurs.
Yeah, so if you want me to start on this?
Please.
Okay, so the number one rule for me personally, and in 1995 when I met my partner Jerry Stead, one of the things that, and Jerry was the former CEO of Honeywell, Square D, AT&T, Ingram Micro, he took public, IHS, he took public. First thing that we really bonded on over breakfast, the very first day we met, was he said, so what's your thoughts on the people around you? And I said, my philosophy forever will be, if the company wins, everyone wins. So in all the acquisitions that I just mentioned earlier about we did, 12 in the last 6 years, every single employee of those companies that we acquired are now stakeholders in our company. And the rule around that, and it's very unique in us doing that because you have ESOPs, you have a lot of other methods to do this. We did this in stock option. I always have done this in stock options because once a month on our company-wide call, I remind everybody what your responsibility is in being an owner in our company. And that's, you're not just an employee here. We need to know, we could always pat on ourselves on the back for what we're doing right, but we really need to know what we could be improving on. And you need to come in here every single day as an owner and think about what would you do differently to make this company more efficient and be able to grow even faster than what we're growing. So that's the way that we've done it, but it's for me, it's number one priority is making sure that employees are not just employees, but they're owners in our companies.
Great, thank you.
Adam, would you want to comment on that from a financial perspective?
Hello? Perfect. So on the financial end of it, most people don't spend the time getting their team and their business ready for a sale, right? That could take years to have the conversation, and part of it is you personally or your ownership group emotionally deciding how you want to move forward with the business, whether that's keep it and scale it to a place where it's maybe a passive business for you or a scale and sell, where your close team around you are the ones going to help you get there. And so if you keep a close group, you want to be able to communicate these things with them. And part of the idea of not having them leave is that they will have some financial benefit to you on the back end. And I have had companies that have gone through the process, gone through the market, and not with DAC, but gone through the whole component of it and decided not to sell, and they still provided those key employees with some form of a cash flow over the next 4 or 5 years afterwards, even though they didn't sell, because they were crucial to getting to the point of saying, hey, these are our options. So I think that when you take care of the right people around you, they'll take care of you. And so on a financial basis, I think it makes complete sense. And there's also a lot of options in which you can go about having stock options or ESOPs or other forms of transactions that really help multiple people. So it's really up to you.
And just to follow up on that, it really is so important to surround yourself. If anybody in this room is preparing or thinking about moving their companies, it truly is about surrounding yourself with the right people around you, the outside people, the attorneys, the bankers, everyone that's involved, the accountants, everyone that's involved in the transaction. And you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to spend that money because I'm not 100% right now. And I promise you that money will pay dividends and dividends on what you're doing, because you need to make sure that the company is properly positioned and that you have all the information that you need and are guided in the information, because you all have your own businesses and you're running them as your businesses. That's your subject matter expertise. You need to make sure you're bringing in the subject matter experts to get you across the line, because that's not what you do. And I'm telling you, I promise you, was one of the hardest things for me in the first transaction, but I would never do anything else without making sure I have the right representation all around me, because I only know what I know, and I'm not an expert in the areas that everybody else is. And that's why I think things like this are really so important for people that are thinking about an exit at some point in time, because the preparation is really number one.
Hey, Peter,
Yeah.
I just wanted to piggyback on that. One of the things I often do when a client reaches out and they start talking about, they're thinking about a transition, they're thinking about maybe transacting in the future. The word preparation is the first thing, and one of the things I do is I'll actually show them a sample due diligence checklist that will be the type of checklist a buyer is going to present to them. And I'll also pull from like an asset purchase agreement, the representations that they're going to be required to make down the road when they do that transaction and sell their business. Because for a lot of business owners, I mean, Bill's been in and out of a number of businesses and built companies. For a lot of people, they might have one deal, right? It might be one company that they built, one transaction. So, and maybe they didn't do acquisitions along the way. Maybe they just organically built their company, sometimes over generations, and now they're doing a transaction. So they're really not prepared for what's going to be asked of them and what they're going to be required to represent. By the time a buyer it goes through a due diligence process, they know your DNA at that point. And so that preparation and kind of troubleshooting well in advance, you can solve a lot of problems.
Katie, is there a question back there?
Thank you. Is this working? Yes. I think Adam and both Bills led up to my question. Thank you, guys. Let's talk about the runway. If I, as a business owner, if I have a bad quarter, a bad month, or I just want to get out of the cold, I call you up and I say, I want to sell. can I do it by March 15th? I mean, I'm being facetious, but can you guys talk about, adding to what Bill said about the runway, about what you would tell them? Nothing's ideal, but what's a good timeline to success?
The advice that I typically give to business owners is that you should run your business like you're going to own it forever, but be prepared to sell it tomorrow for two reasons. One is the preparation everybody's talked about is absolutely essential to making a deal successful. And it's more than just the due diligence items. It's how you position the business, understanding how buyers are going to think about your business. But the other thing that I think we should all remember is that as much as we want to control our timing of our own exit, we often don't. It can be from one standpoint, you could be approached by a strategic buyer tomorrow who's really interested in buying your business, and you really don't want to say to them, gee, we'd love to talk to you, but we're really not ready. Can you come back in 18 months? You can't do that. On the bad side, sometimes things happen in business. Sometimes you lose a major customer. Sometimes a key employee leaves you. And all of a sudden, your perspective on what your time frame is changes dramatically. So I think the bottom line for most businesses is that you really should be prepared to sell your business at any time. Though I think your decision to sell may be dependent upon exactly what happens in the future, but don't let those events shape your decision. Be ready at all times.
For on my end, to me, it's you have to start from almost day one. So many people get emotionally attached to the business, and a lot of our clients probably have cash flow businesses, medical, construction, whatever it may be, where they're living out of the business, right? Their cash flow and the way they think about life is all out of the business. And all of a sudden, when you go to sell, that's gone. And so if you aren't planning and saving properly and putting the right pieces in place, when you go to sell, you're selling on a multiple of what your cash flow and your profit basically is. And so if you're spending all your money, you're not saving it now, when you go to sell, you're not going to make enough money at that sale to then live the same life you're moving. And so to me, you have to do it for multiple years in advance and really plan on trying to save enough money prior to selling to then when you sell, that extra money post-tax really has, FU money, meaning you could do whatever you want. If you're going to go sit with and sell to a private equity firm, they may give you the most amount of money. Most people don't enjoy the work afterwards. And so it really gives you the ability to say, I'm going to go do whatever I want. And you could do it at 50 or 40 or 60, whatever it may be. But preparing yourself way in advance to make the smart decision, because so many people make that emotional decision, right? They lose somebody, they get burnt out, right? How many people got burnt out after COVID and, all the craziness and staff? People were selling for the wrong reasons. But you have to prepare yourself to be able to go and get to that point.
Adam, just to your point, I have kids who are in the 30s and 40s, and so all of their friends come to talk to me when they're thinking of starting businesses. They all want to be entrepreneurs. They want to start a business. And soon after describing a business plan to me, the question they all ask is, what's my exit strategy? Now you think about it, they haven't started a business yet. They're thinking about their exit strategy. Well, it's a very different thing. It's very generational, and maybe they're smarter than we all were because they're thinking of it from day one.
So, Bill, you mentioned that due diligence checklist, and I've seen a bunch of those. It's always, buyer feels like they're in control. They have the checklist. They want all the information. It's like a colonoscopy. They want to know everything about the company. But at the same time, I know Bill and John, you sold your company. So, if you were to go sell your company again today, or if you had to advise somebody, young entrepreneurs, family-owned companies, what's the reverse diligence? What's the diligence of the buyer you would advise? Because I see in the market, the good companies who have survived COVID, who are surviving tariffs, they are bid up. There's a lot of private equity money there, dry powder. They're investing, they're bid up in auction processes. But the ones which are, not there yet, they are having trouble. So if you're in a good position today and you want to go to the market to sell, what do you look for in an ideal partner?
So what would I look for in an ideal partner? Part of your question was related to the due diligence, and when I look at what we accomplished in that phase, it is incredibly invasive. Understanding the data, the numbers that you're pushing through, and, my experience in private equity, it was intense. It was like a over 90-day process, and what we had accomplished prior to that was the normalization of our books. From an accounting side, we had brought on a professional CFO to help get us set up. To your point, whether you're selling or holding, I think the recipe is still the same. And if you build a great company that you want to own, you're probably going to build a great company someone wants to buy. What I would look for in a partner would probably be the individual that understands their business through and through, understands the data that they're pushing through. So when they're kind of going into that opportunity for sale, they know where they stand in the marketplace. They really understand the margins. They understand how they compare against the competition, really what makes them unique. There's got to be a differentiator, because in some capacity, it's never, who knows when the best time to sell is. Maybe it was a year after you sold, maybe it was a year prior to you selling. But I think if you really know what your place is in your industry and how you compare, you're kind of selling yourself, and you're selling the ability to continue on and replicate that same tenacity that brought you there in the first place. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. But ultimately, then you can negotiate, as opposed to negotiating the sale price, you're negotiating the multiple. I think negotiating the multiple is more important, because that is what's going to separate you from the industry standards. And I would look for those partners that are doing something pretty unique in their industry, or have a way of expressing the uniqueness of what they're doing. Hope that answers a little bit of what you're talking about.
And just Alan might want to talk about a little bit about a sales side quality of earnings assessment, right? I think part of that was what you're getting to about if you talk about what kind of diligence you could do on yourself, kind of doing the same analysis that the buyer's going to do on your financials, but doing it in advance, and also doing that strategically, but also from a negotiation standpoint, because most deals today are going to be based on EBITDA and a multiple, but what that is, what the add backs are, there's so much that goes into that. And from my perspective, when I see clients that do the best in their deals, they don't go into it wondering what their response is going to be. They basically make the statement of what they're expecting, and let the buyer react. Do you want to talk about that value?
Yeah, sure thing. Now, does everybody here know what a quality of earnings there are? Yes, no. A quality of earnings is what buyers are doing when they look at your business. They're looking at your financials, but they're looking deeper than your financials. They're looking to understand the business, what the risks are associated with the business, whether it be customer concentration, supply chain, anything else that may give a buyer cause to worry about your business. So a few years ago, buyers started to do these quality of earnings. Every private equity firm does it. Most strategic buyers do it. But all of a sudden, sellers realized that the buyers had an advantage over them, because they were doing these types of quality of earnings reports, and sellers were undefended in this process. So as a defense mechanism, sellers decided, let us do the quality of earnings in advance of the buyer doing it. Let's understand our weaknesses. Let's understand where they are. Let's fix them before the buyer comes to the table, and let's know what these numbers really are. And what it's done for sellers is it's done a few things. It's allowed them to go to the market much stronger. And it also, the biggest thing in a transaction is it's prevented retrading late on in a transaction. There are very few surprises that come up now. So that as a result of that, the deal that you strike is a deal that you're going to close, which is really important in our world of doing deals today. So as a result of that, these quality of earnings, again, it's just getting you prepared for the process and making sure that you go into it. One of the statistics that we come up with is that we get 20% more bids on deals when people do a quality of earnings report than when they don't. And those bids are also higher because buyers have more confidence in what they're looking at.
That's great. 1 second. Katie, you have someone back there?
Hi, how are you, everybody? Mike Corella. Question, when you're actually going through the buying process or the selling process, are there any red flags or hard no's that you would go against? Because, you know, you get offers with cash, stock options, earnouts, non-competes. Is there anything when you're actually having that conversation that red flags pop up and are hard no's?
I can start it on this because I have a lot of experience in this area, and one of them in particular, it's kind of a funny story. People that are running their businesses as lifestyle businesses. So you're running all your family, everything through your business. I don't want to be looking at companies like that. There was a company that we did acquire down in Florida that, well, they had a jet, and that jet was not what I wanted to be buying. So we flipped it from a stock purchase to an asset purchase because there was no other choice to go do that because they weren't clean in what they were doing. Due diligence on something like that takes significantly longer to make sure, because if you see something that's not right, it's just the yellow flag that then is going to just puts up the warnings all the way across the board that if you're doing this, then what else are you doing? And that's why the being prepared on an exit or preparing your company from an exit or from the very start to what everybody's saying here is the same story, is make sure that everything is clean. Make sure that somebody's doing a due diligence on you, that you're friendly before you have somebody across the table from you doing an even rougher due diligence, but your team is there to back you and support you because you already told them all the truths of your company. That makes the transactions go really, really smooth and much, much better. And you're not losing your any negotiation leverage because you've been honest through the whole process and you've been vetted already. So that's one of the most important lessons I've learned through my career is to be self-vetted first, because that avoids the retrading that you heard, because people will come back and say, my gosh, well, I didn't know you had a jet. It was the silliest thing ever. Like that wasn't what the deal was about. But those things do come up. And then who else is on the payroll that isn't an employee in this company that's actually bringing positive things to the earnings and to the company itself? So that's the input I have on that.
Absolutely. And from a lifestyle perspective, I do see that being a challenge from a seller perspective. A lot of companies, if you're anticipating an exit or a sale of your organization, I would definitely say continue to take off your children, your dog, whoever is on payroll. Start to clean up those particular nuances because they're going to come out, and you want to have a relatively clean book. So when you get your add backs and you're looking at that bottom line, you have a real true understanding of what that is. It will lower the red flags from a buying perspective, I'm sure, and it makes you seem more professional. Now, from a seller side on red flags in terms of like maybe the structure of our particular deal, something that I had really considered was I didn't want my deal to be heavy in earnout. So I really wanted to kind of keep the earnout to a single digit number if possible. And I like to think one thing that was interesting is we actually negotiated the multiple on the earnout. So from the cash on close perspective and keeping that earnout something that's reasonably attainable so that we can kind of count on what that would be, but then having a multiple on our EBITDA to achieve the max value we could in our earnout. So if the earnout's too heavy, if they're kind of demanding you input maybe 30% roll in equity if you're going to go to a private equity company, I would start to say those are a little bit of red flags to me. They kind of they want you to have skin in the game, but you don't want to have dictated for you how thick that skin should be because they're going to use too much of your equity to help finance your deal. But you got to really believe in yourself and believe in the future after that.
I want to just make a comment too, because we have different size business owners in the room. And when we talk about the financial data and cleaning up books, and we talk about add backs and quality of earnings assessments, those are going to be for, frankly, like larger, more sophisticated deals where the deal is being based off of multiple EBITDA, and you might get credit, in an ad back maybe for that person that, for the dog that was on the books or whatever. For those businesses that aren't in that realm but are going to get financed by a lender, for example, a bank, maybe an SBA loan, they're going to go off of tax returns. Banks are going to lend off, and we have some bankers in the room, they're not going to kind of take your word for it and what was a real expense and what wasn't. They're going to go on, well, what did you report to the government? And you might make your business incapable of being financed if you don't have clean books leading up to that transaction, because they're going to look at tax returns. So again, on some of the smaller sized deals.
For starters, I want to say my wife used Mandelbaum to buy a hair salon, and you can see I get use of it every day. It's the most ironic thing that she owns. I actually like some of the things you said. The run it like you're gonna, own it forever, but be ready to sell it tomorrow. For us in the community, when do you recommend that we talk to our friends, family, and other people to introduce them to people like yourselves, so they can actually have better conversations with the experts of those things, instead of me just saying, "Hey, listen, on ChatGPT told me this about EBITDA, and so Adam, I got a great idea of when and how you can sell this." So when do we actually have a conversation? Where do you recommend that they meet some of you to have a conversation so they can be prepared for later, or they can be prepared if tomorrow is the day they do want to sell their business?
How about tomorrow? It's never too early, and from our standpoint, we always enjoy having these conversations with businesses and help them think about when they should exit, how they should exit, and it doesn't have to be right away. It can be down the road, but very often it's a question of our helping businesses grow their businesses to the point that they are more saleable. Sometimes you may have an objective in mind in terms of the cash you need out of your business in order to exit. Sometimes there are other factors that may govern what the right timing is for you in the exit. But it's never too early to have that conversation. I think most of the professionals here and around this room would be absolutely willing to have that conversation with you early on, just to make sure you're pointed in the right direction.
Think of your professionals like your board of directors. For companies that aren't big enough to have a board of directors, your lawyer, your accountant, your M&A advisor, your financial advisor, all the professionals that are part of your life and building your business, that know you, that know your business, getting them involved in those conversations really early in advance is critical, because you can garner a lot of advice. And, I just came from New Orleans from a conference actually where we did a very, very similar type of presentation. And that was the way we described it to everyone was, this is your board, and, you start early so that you get the best guidance.
Hi, Rich Hauser, Raw CFO, Controller and Bookkeeping. I have two questions, actually. One is a follow-up, Bill. You said something about your employees knew that they were getting a piece of the pie, so to speak. I've had some people tell me that's not a great idea, is to let people know in advance. And I'm curious, are there some scenarios where it may or may not? And then my second question is about touching on working capital holdbacks, Noel, if some of the panel could talk about that for a moment.
So the most of the employees that we have are less sophisticated in understanding what this is all about. So we actually have phone calls and FaceTimes with people so that they understand what an option is. We start at ground zero because they don't know what this means. They've never had this before. Some of the people that we acquired, they were with the company for 20 years as employees. And then all of a sudden that company got bought, and now they're talking about making me an owner, and everybody's all on edge, like, oh my God, what do I have to pay? And that's just not, and you need to really explain to them that this is something that we are, as an organization, investing in you, and we believe in you, and we want you here. So that's really the key point of why I've always structured all the deals that I've been a part of, for the most part, in getting it done that way, in making sure that the education process, that they do understand what a stock option is from the very beginning, And that happens on the transition call post-close. So we have a company-wide call for all those employees, and we share with them that things are going to happen over the next few weeks. So that's all the preparation. There's a lot of things that have to happen in the course of this. But one of the things I just want to make sure that everybody understands here is somebody said it earlier, that you have to keep running your business. And I was a perfect example of this probably in the year 2000 or so. We had a great offer for our company. And we had 19 years of that company, the whole 19 years. There was only one quarter we didn't grow. And that was the quarter that I got so excited about an offer that I stopped running everything and was just so focused on a transaction that I lost focus on what the most important thing was in running a business. That's one of the most important lessons I hope anybody can walk out of the room with, is you have to run your business because you need to keep growing it and keep your focus. And you're hiring, and you have these professionals in your corners to make sure that the rest of the house is clean while you're doing your job of what got you to the table in the first place of growing your business. And one other thing that's critically important too is your trusted people around you. Who do you share with that you're thinking about selling a company to, or that you're thinking about going out with? You don't let that out, because then it just creates concern throughout the whole organization. You have to have if you have a CFO, but you have the trusted people, your bankers, your accountants, your lawyers, making sure that they understand. And then if you have one or two trusted people in the organization, you do not want this going across the company because it creates a panic. And I've seen it with companies that we've acquired, that they get all excited about it. And one of the first things we say in our discussions in every meeting that we're looking at buying a company is, please do not talk to anybody about this, because we don't want your company to be disturbed while we're going through a due diligence process. It's really important stuff.
That's great advice. I could add a little bit of perspective from my experience and how we handle our employees. I mean, I wish we had the opportunity with private equity to kind of provide stock options or equity for our people. We were able to advocate for a couple of our senior individuals to have equity in the rollover as well, but that has to be kind of clear out of the gate. And when it came to informing the staff, we kept it very close to the chest. So our CFO, who was helping us, who was handling the due diligence with us, she was the only person that knew what we were doing. And then once we knew the deal was imminent, probably within a month, then I brought in our senior leadership team to have that conversation with them. My partner and I, we took the approach that we were going to carve out a chunk of our proceeds, and we were going to distribute it to every single employee that we had. And now we did it at different levels based upon seniority. There was some math behind it, but it was definitely a kind of a gut check decision. And because we couldn't offer equity in a lot of scenarios, we offered that kind of one-time check to everyone. No, so we let the leadership team know about a month in advance, because honestly, we wanted to make sure that they were committed to the next step. They were committed for the future. So we had it tiered in two scenarios. We had one where it would be almost like at close, we would stay on. If you stayed on through closing, then we would offer you X amount of dollars. And then if you were to stay on through the first fiscal year, then this is the allocation would be. And that was personal money. Then every other employee who was not senior leadership, we actually kind of shut the organization down that day. And we brought everybody in for the big announcement. And part of that was sitting down with every individual person, making as much time as they needed to kind of walk them through the process. This is what it means, this is what's happening, and this is what we're going to be giving you for all of the work that you helped us get to this point. So every single person got that check that day, where they were surprised. But the last piece of it that I forgot to mention was, along the journey the entire way, we were never secretive about our desire to grow the organization from a scale perspective. So everybody knew that we were looking at the kind of the North Star growth perspective. We wanted to be a national company. We wanted to be $100 million in revenue. So when we kind of introduced the concept of why we merge into this bigger entity, it fit right in with the dialogue we've been having for the decade before that, is we're trying to do something different and bigger than us. So it wasn't really a surprise, and everybody was kind of excited about what can come next.
Along those lines, you're talking a lot about keeping it close to the vest with your own team. One of the things, Bill, you and I have experienced, maybe you can talk to us a little about, is even when you're doing due diligence, can you discuss kind of doing a phased due diligence so that you don't open up too much too soon?
Yeah, it comes up in certain businesses too, where you have to worry about identity of customers. You know, in some verticals, everyone knows who the customers are, but in others, they don't know who the customers are or who the referral sources are, um, or identification of employees. You know, for the risk of being poached. So sometimes we'll phase the due diligence where initially we might identify customers by customer number versus an employee number, and you try to bring information to them slowly. So, you know, for example, if you have, if you're selling to someone who is a competitor or who's in your space, this is information that you might not, if the deal doesn't go forward, you might not want them to know. So, you know, in fact, one deal I had, I remember we identified it that way, and it flushed out that we had a concentration among a couple of customers, and it was a heavy concentration that the client had, and the deal ended up dying, but we never disclosed, and it was a competitor, and we never disclosed who the customers were. They just knew we had a concentration, and that killed the deal. We never had to get that far. So
I think the idea there is that anybody who's thinking of selling a business has got to make sure that they run the process in a way that doesn't harm their business while you're selling it. And many people make the mistake of either disclosing too much information or allowing information to leak out. And think of all the things that can go wrong, whether it's employees who find out, whether it's customers, whether it's suppliers. So you have to really maintain the information the right way, disclose it on a staged basis, and make sure, again, that you do not make the mistake of damaging your business while you're in the process of selling it.
it's amazing to me too that I've gotten calls where someone's calling to consider hiring us and they have a potential transaction. And I learn on the call, they've provided tons of due diligence. They don't even have a confidentiality agreement. They've got nothing. And they're like, well, I gave my tax returns, my financial state, like they've given tons of information and they didn't even think to have a confidentiality agreement. Now, for most people in the room, that probably seems like completely amateurish. And you say, well, that really but that happens. I mean, I get those calls and people, they stop for a second because they just trusted the person on the other side and just started giving them data.
Well, Bill, how often do you have situations where someone comes to you and says, we've signed a letter of intent, or we've signed a term sheet, and they haven't had any of your advice yet?
Yeah, that happens in a lot of spaces that are less sophisticated. Yes, I have a deal, and they literally they'll shoot you an email, and there's the signed LOI, and you'll ask them, you know, who was involved in this? Well, me, I was involved in it. I negotiated the deal, and then you start saying, but you didn't address this, and you didn't address what your post-sale employment deal looks like, and you didn't address the details of the restrictive covenant, and you start going through it, and there's just silence on the phone because, you know, they have a 2-page letter of intent that doesn't really cover half the things that are going to end up in the definitive agreements. And, you know, now they have an exclusivity period where they can't even talk to someone else for the next 60 or 90 days. So, yeah.
And most of the time that happens purely because someone threw a number out in front of them, and it's purely been based off of emotion. And the best thing you can do is take emotion out of the entire process, right? Don't be selling just because, and someone throws a big number. You really want to take a step back. Is this the right thing for me at this period in time? And bring in the experts, keep it, closed internally, but call Bill, call myself, call whomever, right? To actually think through what the ramifications are. Because in terms of, if we're going private equity, what's the percentage cash to, cash to equity? Right? For so many people, for them, they just see one really large number and not understanding what the vesting period may be, all these different components to it that, the deal that they sign their name to puts them in a pretty bad financial position afterwards.
And just like in anything in life, you have a great team behind you, and that's what you're putting forward. And by having that phone call with somebody that's calling you up out of the blue saying, I want to talk to you about buying the company, just take that breath and just say, you know what, I'm already talking to my advisors about this situation, because you're negotiating from the phone call on. And you need to make sure that they understand that it's just not you against them, that you have a professional team that's fully supportive of what you're doing and making sure that all of your information is accurate and that they're positioning you in the best way possible for the acquirer.
And when you think about classic negotiation theory, the one thing that everyone will tell you is you never want the point person in the discussions to be the decision maker. So you are the decision makers, you are the owners. You need someone out front of you over there who can be more aggressive than you, doesn't have to live with the buyers after the deal is done. And as a result can really make sure that you end up with the right transaction.
Good advice. We've got time for a couple more questions. Gentleman in the back.
Yeah. Hi, Joe Catanzaro, RMG CPA. It's kind of a follow-up, ironically, from what you guys just talked about. Q of E takes quite a bit of time, 3, 6, 9 months. What do you guys recommend either way when the TTM going forward actually rises or dips from what the original deal was predicated on? How often do you see that transaction price adjusted, and what do you recommend to a seller?
I don't think you want to make the mistake of selling off of historical earnings. Buyers don't buy that. Buyers buy the future. And so it's really important that business owners not to make the mistake of simply providing audited financial statements or even recast financial statements. You have to set the tone of the narrative for this discussion, which means you want to be able to talk about the future, talk about what the forecast is going to be. Buyers may not be willing to buy everything you're telling them, but if you do, you can often take that one bad quarter or that rising performance into account in terms of the total transaction.
We actually had that same scenario take place. The due diligence process from LOI through close was about 5 months. And in a TTM model, we started to go through our busy season and our TTM kept rising. And within our LOI, they kind of shut the door. I think it was about February, they shut the door on what they were measuring. So I had the conversation with them, that, our TTM is not what we pinned in February. Our TTM is what we have now. And with a non-binding LOI and the legal team to kind of back it up, you have the opportunity to not take that deal. But ultimately, I think it's important to get that kind of clear out of the gate, what you're going to be measuring. Because we were measuring something different than they were. My thought was, it would be the TTM prior to close, and we'd continue to adjust north if we're going to move north. But I also have to take the same side if our TTM started going down, which goes to your point, Bill, about running your business, because you could drop off a cliff pretty quick if you're focused too much on the deal. We would take the haircut on that way. So it's an opportunity, but I was told it was called a retrade. I was actually curious on how bad that was of me to do, but
That's right. They would have done it to you. So.
they would have absolutely done it to me, yeah. So classic retrade, I was told.
So for those of you who remember the Jerry Springer show, who's going to take us to commercial here? Anybody have a closing question they'd like to? We got two. All right, we're going to do this gentleman and then over there.
So more of a nefarious question. When you have a strategic buyer, you ever experience a situation where they're doing the acquisition due diligence to learn about the target?
Yes. Yeah. And you have to be careful. One of the concerns that you have is when you're looking at a buyer is, are they just doing this to gain knowledge about your business, or are they not? And I think, one of the things that we spend time on with clients is thinking about the risk that any buyer in particular poses to you. And there are strategies that can be employed to try to minimize that risk. Some of it is blinding certain information. Some of it is not bringing in the most competitive players until very late in the process. So you know where you are, you know who the other players and what they're willing to pay for your business. But again, you're absolutely right. You have to be concerned about it.
It's happened to me 4 times when we had MD Online. Same company, 4 times, came up, LOIs were in place, everything. And again, you get excited about the opportunity. And all it was a fishing expedition to see what else we were doing next so they can go and try to replicate what we were doing. And when we finally were doing a formal process for MD Online, they were not included in the process. And they were a big publicly traded company.
So do you have any warning signals that you see when you
look, it's doing the due diligence on the buyer and who they are, right? And I would say there are a couple of things. One is among strategics, really, it's just the sense of who they are and what they're doing, and you got to rely upon that and of the owner's knowledge of the business in terms of what they're doing. When you're dealing with private equity firms, one of the things that I always believe is that every firm has their own DNA. There are those who are straight shooters and are going to run the process in the right way and run it the same way in every single transaction. There are those who, don't quite act that way, and they are, maybe I'd say untrustworthy. Maybe they have a habit of retrading deals late on in a process, but you know that before you walk into the process if you're out there in the marketplace. And so you just have, it's buyer beware. You got to be careful about who you're talking to, seller beware, and you can generally avoid those issues.
And that's the most important thing about getting a banker early in the process or before you even start a process, is because they know who all the players are. And they know the actions and the way that they have acted in the past, because they all have reputations. All the PE firms out there have reputations of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the retraders. So the professionals know this. You running your business have no idea, because that's not your subject matter expertise. That's what these guys do. So make sure you're aligning yourselves with these right people.
Yeah, this probably should have been the first question of the night. So I do want to own my business forever, but I know I need to be ready to sell tomorrow. And I'm in sales, and I understand the value of time, and without wasting anybody's time or making them go on a fishing expedition, what's the best way for me to get ready to sell tomorrow?
I would say Bill led it off with the right way when he said, get the right team around you. And I think that is really it. You talk to your lawyers, you talk to your accountants, you talk to an investment banker, and allow them each to sort of help you understand not only the process of selling, but the process of running your business to maximize its value is not any different than the process you're going to use when you sell it. And so if you think about what's going to make your business valuable to buyers, it's going to make it valuable to you. It's going to make it valuable to your next generation. And again, if you can get the right advisors on board, it's going to make your life really easy in terms of walking through that process.
I think also too, when you're evaluating what your future is going to be like, we can look at it from a business perspective. You want to own your company forever. I think there's opportunity to kind of look at it from a personal perspective. Where do you want to be at in your life in 10 years, 20 years, and kind of putting some personal goals in there, and how is this business going to work for me to achieve those personal goals? And it might be a couple different scenarios that come up for you. So I would say get really clear, whether it's with your financial advisement team, whether it's with professional coaching, someone who can help kind of draft out where you want to be as an individual and as a family. And that might help change or drive your business decisions a little bit differently.
So I'm just going to ask the panel if they have any just closing sound bites that they'd like to offer here, but I want to thank all of you for contributing to this. The bar remains open. There's plenty of food. We're not letting these gentlemen go anywhere, so if you have a question you'd like to ask one-on-one, I hope you will. I really, really am grateful for your interactive approach here today. Fellas, anything you want to say here to close it out?
I'll say one thing. Ultimately, I think build a business that makes it really difficult to sell, right? It's so profitable, then you're enjoying your life. Build it so when you do sell it, it's because the offer was so great that it really does change your life. But build something that you just absolutely enjoy doing.
Thank you, everyone.